Yesterday, we had a big blast at the Singapore Sketchers Play2 event. I'll tell you more about it after our intro. Before I tell you about Singapore Sketchers event, Play2, let me just say that I'm taking a group to Jakarta on the 21st to 24th of November. We start on the 21st and on 24th, 4 days of sketching and learning. If you don't really want to take the classes, it's possible to come along for a sketch. I have a travel agent that's taking care of the hotel and so on. More information in the description below. So back to this stone lion, I'm going to use my 7 elements of urban sketching book to kind of illustrate what I do or some of the elements I use to construct this sketch. So let's go. So let's talk about the recipe I'm going to use for this to cook this sketch. A very simple macro outline of the stone lion. I made some mistake, but mistakes are good. It is part of being human. So it's quite alright. By the way, excuse my voice. I have a little bit of a throat. After speaking for almost 3-4 hours yesterday, it's a little bit sore. Anyway, so as I always say, the best sketch are from a macro first, and then you deal with the small little details. Macro, get the macro right, you can then afford to have the micro wrong. And of course, you must also have fun while you're sketching and drawing and you're enjoying yourself. I mean, I've speed up my process here, but you could see that I'm going through the details after I have laid out more or less the macro outline, the big picture, so to speak. You deal with a small picture after the big picture, of course. That's always my advice, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. Okay, after the drawing itself, my plan is to create some negative shapes around the white or beige color stone lion. The only way you can make something like the lion pop is by using slightly darker colors in the background. So in some ways, this is negative shape drawing. And the background technique and recipe is from my latest book, The Joy of Loose. It's basically the psychedelic background recipe. What it is basically cobalt with quinacridone rose. Those are my two powerhouse color I use to create somewhat of a purple, and sometimes I just leave them. And the background technique and recipe is from my latest book, The Joy of Loose. It's basically the psychedelic background recipe. What it is basically cobalt with quinacridone rose. Those are my two powerhouse color I use to create somewhat of a purple, and sometimes I just leave them uh, as themselves. In other words, I leave the blue and there's no tomorrow. But I'm using very, very small amount of it, not too much. So it's basically allowing the colors to shine. Opaque colors such as cadmiums are very bright. They basically block the light from the paper, but in itself they are super bright, and it creates a kind of feeling that you cannot get the colors effect from transparent watercolor. The next idea is to create space. In other words, to push the stone lion further forward by stacking something in the back. I've decided to do something very dark using Carbozel Violet, a little bit of neutral tint thrown in, and I'm drawing a line behind it. Trying to make the line as artistic as I can without, a confident line is a good one, creating that sense of confidence that runs right through it. And of course, a lot of splattering, making it look fun. It is actually quite fun. While I was doing it, I was playing around with it, trying to create marks with all the tools. I flipped my brush around using the back to then draw all kinds of lines. I use vertical lines to create that contrast with the diagonal black line that I've just drawn. It is a very good contrast in a way. Keep in mind that it is okay to use vertical or horizontal line as long as you contrast it, you'll be fine. Okay, now I think the background is somewhat done. We're gonna attack the foreground object itself. It's important to think in terms of form. What I'm trying to achieve here is the element of form, in other words, three-dimensional illusion from a two-dimensional stone lion drawing. How do you do it? Well, one, you used gradation. You gradate the colors, simplifying one of the edge, or rather, soften one of the edge so that the shape looks gradated. Put in a bit of shadow. Use shadow to create the sense of depth. And finally, you can use line to create the illusion of plane or how the plane runs on the paper itself. Well, of course, you can never create a three-dimensional sculpture, physically protruding out of your sketch. Although that is always possible with sculpture, but with painting, that's not possible. So what you do is using those few tricks that an artist has: gradation, lines, and also the illusion of space through stacking. What I do from here on out really is to create more texture, a little bit more gradation, reading the soft, diffused shadows and try to replicate it as best I can. I don't think I can do all the shadows. It's quite impossible. I mean, I don't have the skills nor the patience, to create the sort of gradation that is in realism. Some of the painting you see in hyper realism, they're incredible. The amount of patience required to paint the, the gradation. In other words, you need to be very precise in the value scale. I use a scale of 1 to 5, one being paper white and 5 being the darkest that I could do with my palette. But there are some artists that will go down to 12 scales and, being very precise with the scale. Incredible, intricate, detailed work. I would die from too much detail because I'm just not that sort. I'm ADHD, so I guess I'm much more the hit and go, smash and finish. Well, that's why the name of the channel is called Smashing Sketches, and I call all of you smashers. If you like that style, I guess you will be subscribing to this channel. If not, then I guess you won't watch many of my videos. Okay, jokes aside, I'm quite serious about the fact that you need a lot of patience and discipline to break down many, many layers of, you know, details in your sketch. Each his own, I suppose, but for me, I much prefer the slapstick sort of sketchy look sketch. We've already moved into using my fountain pen to redraw the outline to make it look like a ink and wash. It's a bit of a fake because I started with pencil, but the recipe can change. I mean, it's like cooking. If you know what you're doing, you can always tweak the recipe you get from the books or from media, and you can always fancy a bit of tweak. So in this case, it is ink and wash, but it's actually pencil wash ink in that order. Well, doesn't really matter. It works, as you will see. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use line to strengthen where to make the form or the shape a little bit stronger. It's not really a trick or anything. It's just using it to create the form. As you can see, some of the doodles I'm doing is to create the heft or the three-dimensional sense of the sculpture by using lines to fake or create the illusions of 3D, three dimension, that is. I was explaining this little trick to many of my participants yesterday at the Singapore Sketchers Play2 event, and you could see some of the lights turn on in some of the eyes of the participant when I show them how to create heft or 3D using line. I basically say that it's an illusion of space or three dimension. It works. I mean, try it. But I also gave the advice that don't overuse it because if you overuse it, it becomes too hairy and too much lines, and it's a bit distracting, and it's something that would destroy your sketch artistic quality. So use it in moderation, use it where you want to create the illusion of 3D, but don't really put too much lines. It's use it sparingly. The other thing you can do is not to use fountain pen to do the lines. You can also use, like you could see in my sketch, watercolor lines. Some of the lines are watercolor lines, some of the lines are fountain pen lines. In combination, the two of them works really, really well. It creates an illusion of three dimension, and it gives depth. It gives depth even to the plane that you're working on itself. The final look and feel of the sketch is quite obvious at this point. Psychedelic background, some elements to push the stone lion forward, aka the black line that runs behind it. And also, well, at this point, I'm just going to write my name to kind of, take stock and also wait for some of the paint to dry before I continue. But as you can see, the sketch is more or less there. They probably will be some touch up that I need to do, but it's kind of where I want it to be. Some touch up of this sketch, and I think we'll be done. But I just want to say that this sketch is going for sale during the Singapore Sketches exhibition in November. I priced it at Singapore dollars 500. So if you want this, you can buy it then, or I can mark it as sale if you send me a check before that. Uh, anyway, uh, hard selling aside, let me come back to the sketch itself. The the doodles that I'm doing really is to create the texturing, or what I see are the markings on the stone lion itself, all the craftsmanship that's gone into it. I'm trying to replicate it the best I can, with the idea that whatever is closer to me, a bit more sharper, with a bit lighter touch if it's further away from me. If it's in the shadow, I could use a thicker line. In the light, I would use a thinner line. One of the final thing I would do is to put some opaque red and opaque yellow with the ribbons and the little bell. Maybe I'm not sure what that is. I think it's a bell, or some kind of decorations that they usually put around stone lions in the region, Singapore, and most of the East Asia culture has somewhat something similar, and they'll put ribbon, or they'll put some kind of cloth to wrap around. But anyway, here I'm just using opaque to basically put the final touches on the stone lion, or the sketch here. They are opaque, and I want to create a bit of contrast as well. I can't really paint metal in such a small space or small shape. So the best I could do is to use opaque to kind of make it shine. And that's about it. So, okay, so I think the sketch is almost done. I just want to say that I've had a blast. I hope that I've given you some insights as to how I use my recipes from my book, Joy of Loose, as well as how I use some of the elements of design. There are only 7 design elements. It's space, line, shape, form, color, value, texture. I was having a blast describing this in my demo yesterday at the Play2 event, but I hope today you get a glimpse of that as well. And if you attended my workshop yesterday, please do drop a note to see whether this video today helped you in any way. In any case, stay safe wherever you are. This is We Take Out for this week. Bye.